Hello, I want to talk today about the 4 W's, how to prepare a complaint. We call these the principles, and they're an aid memoir, they're an assistant for you if you're preparing a letter of complaint. Just emphasizing what the W's are. Who, that is, who are the actors, who are the people involved in your complaint? Who did what to who? What happened? Describe what the incident was as accurately as possible. The what includes all the incidents you are complaining of, and you should set the scene of before the event, what you were doing, and then describe the event in time sequence. That's what we call in chronological order. So that's the what. Next one, where? Where did it happen? What was the location? Now that can include an address and it should also include specifically where in that address the events took place that you're complaining about. I would recommend that you draw a little plan of where it happened immediately after the incident or as soon as possible after the incident, and sign and date it, because you will forget. Also put down the time, at least the time at the end of the incident. Obviously it's going to be difficult to record the time at the beginning of the incident because you don't know it's an incident until it becomes one. But at the end of the incident, try and remember to put the time down. If you can't be 100% accurate on the time, then it's important that you do not commit yourself to a specific time. You give a range of between, say, 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock in the afternoon if you're not sure when the time was. In this case, we're looking at a scenario. Zabida gets accused of shoplifting by a store detective, and she's detained by the store detective, Ms. X, and brought back into the shop. The store detective searches Zabida, and she has no consent from Zabida when she was searched, and discovers she has taken nothing. There has been no theft. The detention is unlawful and Zabida is released. The store detective claims it was an honest mistake, and Zabida wants to make a complaint against the store detective and the store because she was unlawfully detained, she was physically assaulted, and she was deprived of her liberty. So in this particular case, let's look at the who and the what. In this case, Zabida's interaction was with the store detective, who's called Miss X. That's the who. What happened? Well, she was stopped outside Grossi's Shop Limited, and the store detective accused her of stealing a pair of sunglasses. She was detained and brought back into the store through the store, past customers, where she felt humiliated and embarrassed, and the store detective detained her and put her into a room, searched her and touched her in doing so, and then she was released 25 minutes later. This is the what. So we know what happened, we know who it happened to. The when is the date and time the event started and finished. In this case, Zabida was in the store and being observed, and the time, if it's accurate on the CCTV, gives the period of detention as 25 minutes from start to finish. The where is the name, is the address of the store and the name of the store and the specific location where the incidents took place. In this case, the first contact happened outside the store, and then contact continued going back into the storeroom, and to where she was detained, and then it moved out of the store again when she was marched out of the shop. So there are different wheres for different times. So that's why I recommend doing a plan. Shoplifting is theft, and it is an indictable offence. Section 1 of the Theft Act 1968 deals with the definition of theft, which is the dishonest appropriation of property belonging to another with the intention of permanently depriving the other of it. A store detective does not have police powers of arrest. They have, under section 24 large A of the Police and Criminal Evidence Act 1984, which is frequently called PACE, the power to arrest as a civilian if they find someone in the act of committing an offence and they reasonably believe they have grounds for suspecting them to be in the act of committing the offence, and the offence has been committed, and the person you want to arrest is guilty of that offence, or you have reasonable grounds to believe or suspect they are guilty of that offence. So what does that mean? A citizen has got limited powers of arrest. In this case, we know it's theft. That's the allegation. It's an indictable offence, so that would be fine. Has the offence been committed? And do they have reasonable grounds to suspect Zabida is in the act of committing that offence? Well, no offence has been committed. No theft took place. So no indictable offence has been committed, and you can't have reasonable grounds to suspect that she's guilty of committing an indictable offence because no indictable offence has been committed. You can be wrong about the person you believe is committing the indictable offence, but the citizen's powers of arrest require the existence of an offence being committed or has been committed, and we don't have that element in this scenario. As I said, Zabida was not in the act of committing any offence of theft. No offence took place. The sunglasses are still on display. So on the face of the facts, the store detective, when she searched Zabida, she did so without a lawful ground to search. She hasn't got a power of search. She did so without her consent, and that would amount to a battery, a physical laying hands on her. And she didn't have reasonable grounds to suspect that an entitled offence was being committed. So she hasn't got grounds to make the detention in the first place. Now, what are the consequences of the store detective doing this? Well, a member of the public who has been falsely detained, falsely searched, assaulted, and there's a battery present as well because there's a physical laying hands on Zabida, that gives rise to what we call the common law torts of false imprisonment and trespass to person. Torts are civil matters or civil wrongs which can be pursued in the civil courts, like the county court and the high court, against someone who has committed those torts. To prove those torts, you need to show that it was directly and intentionally, she was directly and intentionally deprived of her liberty, and that the detention was effectively unlawful. The defendant, the store in this case, because the store detective was acting for the store, and the individual store detective potentially have to show that their detention of Zabida and their touching of Zabida was lawful and for a lawful reason. If they fail to show that on the balance of probabilities, then in common law there is a right of compensation and aggravated damages in the civil courts. Some solicitors will represent this on a no-win, no-fee basis, or Zabida may have some legal expense insurance in her home contents insurance policy if she's got her own home, or if she lives in a home, her parents might have legal expense insurance that covers her. So there is a number of ways of funding through no win, no fee, or through insurance, a claim against the shop and the individual acting for the shop. As I said, we're going to split the letter into parts so that you can see clearer. The top part of the letter deals with the data, the title, which is the letter of complaint, the data of, and that's Zabida's full name, which is what goes in where the exits are, or if you were doing your own, you would put your name there. Subject request, full stop. FAO means for the attention of the company secretary. Company secretary is available if you do a Google search on Companies House for the name of the company. In this case, it's Grotty Shop Limited. And then it provides the shop address and the date, and then the details of Zebeda. Next slide. This is the entire middle of the letter, main content of the letter. And as you can see, it sets out briefly what happened. So the what of it is your shop at, that's the where, on, date and time, who, what, where and when, so that's the when. I was looking at sunglasses. When I left the shop, I was approached and detained by the store detective working for you. So that's a combination of who, what, where and when. And then she goes on to describe being accused of stealing some sunglasses and putting them in her jacket pocket, and describes being frog marched through the store into the storeroom by the store detective taking hold of her arm, and then being imprisoned by the store detective blocking the only door out of the storeroom. She describes the store detective taking the jacket off her and searching it without asking her consent, and that no sunglasses was found. She describes that the store detective apologized for detaining her and that admitted that they'd made a mistake and escorting her off the premises. The last sentence relates to how she felt about what had happened. I was humiliated, my arm was made red by her holding me. I didn't consent to the detention, assault and battery I suffered. So she's specifying the allegations. Okay, next slide. The last part of the letter is quite important because you're making a data subject request immediately, and you're entitled to do that under the Data Protection Act 2018. I make a data access request for the disclosure of any records you have of the incident in accordance with the Data Protection Act 2018 and the GDPR, which is the data protection regulations. And Zebeda then signs it. So what are we after? Well, we're after draft letter to the company secretary, Grotty Shop Limited, and we're after any incident report that the store detective would have done, writing in a statement or something. She would have written something down, surely, and CCTV. Okay, so that's the data we're after. Now, the value of the claim, because if someone falsely imprisons you, assaults you, and effectively injures you, there's a battery element on it, and unlawfully searches you, then you've got a potential claim, which is what we call a tort, a civil wrong. So, what's the value of the claim? Well, it varies. It's a fairly short detention, but there is physical and mental harm to consider and humiliation of being walked through the store. It will depend very much on the judge's view, and it's a range. It's never a, it is definitely so many £1,000. It'll be a range. And the range in this case is between £1,000, which is the minimum, to £10,000, which would be the maximum for this particular claim. She should seek advice from a solicitor who is prepared to take the case on a no-win, no-fee basis. But first, she should check her insurance. Now, she's only 19, she probably hasn't got insurance, but if she lives at home, her parents might have legal expense cover for everyone in the household through their normal home contents insurance policy. There are quite a lot of them about a third of people who have like a fully comprehensive home contents insurance policy will have that sort of cover. So it's important to check, because if you have got that cover, you can get advice from one of the insurance company's legal staff, who will give you advice, and they will take over the case if they think it's got a reasonable prospects of success. That's more than 51% prospects. If they think it has got reasonable prospects of success, and they will pursue that claim for you if you're insured. So it's important to look, because if you're not insured, then you'll need to do it on a no-win, no-fee basis, or do it yourself. Now, you could start on the process of doing it yourself, but it's quite complicated making a claim in the civil courts. It may be that the shop will effectively offer a small amount of money immediately to try and discourage you from making a claim. Certainly I would, if I was in their shoes. A token offer, say, of a couple of £100, £500 or something like that, to tempt you to put it down to experience and write it off. But you need to consider whether you want to pursue the claim or not, and you can always get some legal advice from a solicitor specialising in these sorts of claims. Good point. How do you find a solicitor specialising in these sorts of civil action claims? Well, you go to the Law Society website and you look for solicitors specialising in false imprisonment claims and false arrest or detention claims, and you should find them in your area. Next slide. Well, that concludes this particular lecture. I hope you found it useful. My name's Anthony Hughes. I'm a non-practicing barrister who effectively I've retired. I've got a master's degree in law and a postgraduate certificate in education. This is totally free. I'm not employed by anyone. I'm doing it effectively to help people. Thanks for listening. Cheers and bye.